Times-Picayune. I know some of you know that already. I'm an assistant professor in the Mako department and also one of the organizers for our Black History Month program. It's part of the larger celebration of Black History Month in the university. So our topic today focuses on diversity both in media employment and diversity in the news coverage. So what we ultimately see as the end product, whether we listen to the news, whether we watch the news, whether we read the news, hopefully you all are taking in what's going on and what the hot button issues are of today. So both of those topics are very, very important, not just for study, but for practice. So there's a study that's been conducted for a long time now by the American Society of Newspaper Editors, and it's called the Newsroom Diversity Survey. And the purpose of that survey is to gauge the growth of diverse representation in the newsroom. And so while there is a little bit of growth that's been seen, that's still not enough. It's an uphill battle, but we have to continue to work to advance and strengthen diversity, again, in the newsroom and also in the news coverage that we see. So to talk a little bit more about this topic, we have a very accomplished panel of media professionals and educators. We have Felicia Harry, Chris Singleton, and Will Sutton. And so they're going to talk in depth about those two main topics. We'll also have Farron Clark, who's also an assistant professor in the Mako department, who will serve as the moderator of our panel. And we'll close out with remarks from our department chair, Dr. James Stewart. So before we get into the panel discussion, I do want to give you some background on our three panelists. Felicia Harry is the president and CEO of the Bethel Community Outreach Project in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. She also directs the Lions Quest program, which is a social learning program for students from grades K through 12, and she's a Lions Quest workshop facilitator. Previously, she worked here at Nicholls State as an assistant professor of mass communication. She retired after more than 2 decades at the university as an administrator and faculty member. In the department, she was chair of the public relations sequence and the advisor to the PRSSA chapter here. She developed the inaugural Women and Minorities in Media course, and prior to becoming a full-time faculty member, she was the first full-time director of the Louisiana Center for Women in Government. Professionally, she has been a newspaper reporter, writer, photographer, columnist, editor, as well as a PR practitioner. She holds 2 degrees from LSU in Baton Rouge, and those are a Bachelor of Arts in Journalism and a Master's in Journalism. She has completed additional coursework at Sutton University in Baton Rouge and Nicholls State University, and that's Ms. Felicia Harry. Next, we have Chris Singleton. He's a sports writer at the Houma and also the Daily Comet. He was born and raised in Morgan City, Louisiana, graduated from Morgan City High School. He later attended Nicholls, where he majored in mass communication and concentrated in print journalism. While in college, he worked for the Nicholls Work, serving as a sports editor for 4 years. Chris has worked as a sports writer for both the Houma and Thibodeau Daily Comet since 2005, where he has won numerous writing awards from the Louisiana Sports Writers Association, the Louisiana Press Association, the Louisiana Mississippi Associated Press Media Editors Awards, and the Best of Gay House Awards. In 2008, Chris was named Sports Writer of the Year by the Louisiana Sports Writers Association. And then we have Will Sutton, who's currently a columnist at the Times-Picayune and the Advocate. Will Sutton is a veteran journalist and senior editor who joined the Times-Picayune and the Advocate as a columnist and editorial writer in late September 2019. Will has a distinguished career in daily journalism, higher education, communications, and marketing, a member of the Association for Education in Journalism and Mass Communication. He is taught at Hampton University and Grambling State University, and he has been the Director of Communications at Grambling State, and he has sat on the Board of Visitors at the Merrill College of Journalism at the University of Maryland for many years. A New Orleans native, Sutton attended and graduated from Hampton University. In Virginia, He then worked as a reporter at the Nets Courier Post in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, then at the Philadelphia Inquirer. He was a Nieman Fellow at Harvard University in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and then returned to the Inquirer to start his editing career. He left the Inquirer to lead Knight Ritter's Post-Tribune in Gary, Indiana, first as managing editor and then as editor and vice president. Will worked as a senior editor at McClatchy's The News and Observer in Raleigh, North Carolina, where he led award-winning editing, features, graphics, photo, and sports coverage. He is a member of several journalism and media organizations, including the Asian American Journalists Association, the Society of Professional Journalists, and the Online News Association. He is also a longtime member and past president of the National Association of Black Journalists. So those are our panelists. At this time, I'll bring up Mr. Farron Clark, who will serve as our moderator for this afternoon.
Thank you, Dr. Bigger. First, how about we put our hands together for our panelists coming out here to share their insight, and we truly appreciate your time. So, lift every voice, a panel discussion about the importance of diversity in media employment and in news coverage. At this time, we would like for our panelists, starting with Mr. Singleton, you can take about 5 to 7 minutes to talk about that wide range of discussion. You can pick whatever angle you would like to address it, and then we'll work our way on through.
Made me sit in the middle.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Chris Singleton. I'm a staff writer at the Houma Courier and the Typical Daily Comet newspapers here locally, right here in Terrebonne parishes. I've been working at the paper since 2005. You know, whenever I think about the Katrina year. That was the year Katrina hit, and life around as we know it changed for so many people, not only in New Orleans area or Mississippi, but also here around Nichols, with the influence of many people who lost homes, lives, everything from Katrina. And that kind of got me jump-started in my professional career. And since 2005, I've been working with the Houma Courier and the Typical Daily Comet as a sports reporter. I started as a sports reporter, and kind of ever since starting in sports reporting, I kind of dabbled all over the place, whether it's news reporting or photography or different areas of journalism, because it's not confined to one particular area. The best thing about our profession is you can always grow, you can always move to other areas within the field, and all the knowledge that you guys are learning right now, put all that together and it will pay off for you one day. And I'm just thinking about 15 years ago, I was sitting out there with you guys, where you guys are right now, looking up here at professionals and mentors. And Ms. Harry was an old instructor of mine, mass communication, public speaking. She definitely served as a mentor, not only her, but Dr. Stewart, Dr. Simon Selly, a lot of the same Mako professors you have here today were my mentors 15, 20 years ago. And I definitely thank all of them for helping set me on the path where I am today, where I've been a professional journalist now for almost 15, 16 years. And basically, I wanted to come here and let you guys know that our industry is definitely changing, which is in some ways good, in some ways bad. The climate for a reporter is definitely under fire, you could say, in some areas where, our profession is being under attack, considering, where you sit in the political arena, but, people are questioning fact-checking and all this, so definitely, as journalists, what you want to do is you always want to be accurate, you always want to be fair, and as far as minorities, it's very important to have minorities in the journalism profession, because every reporter serves as a leader in sort of ways, a community, reporting on your community looks to you to tell stories, whether it's sports stories, whether it's news stories, whether it's music stories, you know, we have a job to do. And minorities play a big role in that because we have a lot of minorities in our community who are looking for us to make sure their stories are being told. You know, stories that African Americans or Hispanics would know about. We have to reach out to those communities, and who better to tell those stories than the people who come from those communities. So that's one thing I take pride in. And you know, our industry has changed, and unfortunately a lot of jobs have been cut short because you look across the country, you know, you move from print papers to more digital has cost a lot of journalists their jobs. And when I remember when I started at the Houma and Times-Picayune Comet, right after I graduated, I had a job waiting for me. You know, they would welcome me with full arms to come on, you know, and become part of their staff. These days, those opportunities are limited, not only for Black Americans, but also for anyone, just because there are not that many available opportunities. So I'm looking forward to sharing ideas with our panel here and with you guys, you know, ways that we can all come together and try to find ways to get more minorities involved, open doors, so to speak, so you guys have the same opportunities that we did.
Thank you, Mr. Singleton. Ms. Harris.
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. It's good to be back on campus. It's good to look at an audience of adults. In the Lions Quest workshops, what I do is facilitate workshops for 7th graders. And let me tell you, that's a whole different world. And I think I've had more of an education than I could have ever given them about what they say to me. But what's fascinating to me is that their media consumption is limited to things like Real Housewives. And that's what they base their role models on and their expectations. And so sometimes I have hurdles to cross even there, trying to tell them to watch the news, pay attention to what's going on in the world, but of course, you know, that gets played off because I'm an old lady, you know. But anyway, so diversity in media is important because there's still lots of misunderstandings about what diversity is and what inclusion is. And really, if you think about it, what we see, hear, read, comes from the media. It influences us, right? It helps us to construct reality. I was having a conversation with my daughter a few weeks ago, Super Bowl Sunday, and she was going on and on about how down to earth J-Lo is. And this girl, my daughter, was talking about J-Lo like they were best friends, like they had grown up together. And she's like, J-Lo is so down to earth. And I'm like, how do you know that? And she's like, well, I've seen interviews and I've seen her do other things and I've seen her hug her daughter. So I'm like, well, okay. Definitely a media construction of what J-Lo is or should be to her. But a lot of people use that information, whether it's fact or fiction, because like Chris said, there are a lot of things out there now that are presented as news that may not necessarily be accurate, and whether it's presented as news or entertainment, we use that to form opinions, to make judgments, to influence other people, and sometimes people act on what they see, hear, or read. I mean, and that's not always bad, because I know you've probably seen those commercials, those minute-long commercials where they show the freezing dogs and, you know, on chains, and the children in the hospital who want to give you a blanket with a picture of a Shriner on it. And they want you to do what? They want you to run to the computer, to the phone, and give them money. And that's not a bad thing, because those operations do need money. Of course, when I see the Save the Animal ones, I will tell you I changed the station. Because I don't want a t-shirt that says I gave to the animals. I can just go out to the backyard and deal with our dog, but that's another story. So I don't want to sound like I'm placing the blame for everything, all the world's problems on media, because that would be, of course, not true. But I will also tell you that what we see, hear, and read affects us in ways that people don't think about. I know from my own experience now that churches are leery of strangers. You know, the role of churches used to be what? Open the doors, everybody welcome, everybody come in. But ever since a young white man entered a historic black AME church in South Carolina a few years ago, pretending to participate in Bible study, but then before he left, pulled out a gun and killed 9 people. So I belong to an AME church, and we now have services with somebody standing at the door. And I will tell you, on more than one occasion, I've been scared to open the door on Wednesday night when we have Bible study, when it's dark, because I don't know who's on the other side. And we did have a gentleman come, and I'm going to tell you, I was looking at him kind of funny, you know, because it had just happened, and he was not white, but he still was like, well, who are you? You know, and why are you here? And then he finally said, Mr. So-and-so sent me, and once he said Mr. So-and-so's name, then we were okay. But let me go back to that story from South Carolina. One of the first things the police did, and what they do now in law enforcement when something like that happens, a hate crime, is they start looking at the perpetrator's phone, computer, correspondence, and what they found out about this young man was that he frequented a website that talked about white supremacy, and it was also littered with pictures of the Confederate flag. That information created this whole national debate about the Confederate flag. Again, we're going to debate the Confederate flag as long as there's the North and the South in the United States, and whether or not the flag represents hatred or does it represent heritage. But most of us, I think, live in a circle, not in a box, in a circle, where the people we interact with are mainly like us, they think like us, and I'm not saying we don't come in contact with people who aren't like us, but usually that contact is superficial, right? Somebody in your class, you know, it's the lady you chat with at the grocery store, you know, somebody you maybe you socialize with. But you know, sometimes when people don't act a certain way, we excuse them away. Like, oh, she doesn't talk like she's black. Oh, she doesn't look like she's black. But you're different from them. So we get those ideas, I think, of what it means to be black, what it means to be tall. Because if you're tall, people think that what? You should play basketball, right? All the time, and every time. So if we think that every young black male we see wearing a hooded sweatshirt is a threat, we may find ourselves feeling threatened when we see one. And I will tell you, I was in the grocery store the other day, and this young man had on a hooded sweatshirt. But you know why? He's working in the meat department. And it's cold in there. So he had every reason, but I mean, I wasn't afraid. But then sometimes, you know, maybe they're just having a bad hair day. You know, you don't know. So we come to believe every person who appears to be a foreigner in this country, if we start to assume that they are here illegally, then we treat them disrespectfully. Last week, the day after the State of the Union address, and the Democrat response was given by the governor of Michigan. In Michigan, I forget what city, a school held a meeting of parents because the parents were concerned that there was excessive bullying going on in the school. One man got up to speak and had a Hispanic accent, and before he could finish talking about how his child was being treated, somebody heckled, well, if it's so bad here, why don't you just go back to where you came from? You know, which really personified the problem that was going on in the school, you know, attitudes. So we start to make assumptions about people. And like Chris said, the media world is different. I'm going to tell you, I'm in my 60s. I've earned every year of that. Every one of these gray hairs I've earned. But when I was little, there were 3 TV channels, ABC, CBS, NBC. If the president was giving a speech as the State of the Union address, he was on every channel. Your options were to watch or not watch. And if you didn't watch, you couldn't go to the computer, because let me tell you, there was no such thing. You could get a book and you could read. And if you could turn on the radio, you probably hear the State of the Union address as well. But there's so much competition, and we can pick and choose what we want to see, what we want to read, what we want to hear, which is good and not good, because we can go through life as my seventh graders watching only the Real Housewives of Atlanta and worrying about how their hair looks and how their shoes look, and because they're, of course, they're in schools in Baton Rouge, they're wearing uniforms. And so,
A minute, but that's like a minute.
I got a minute. Okay, but anyway, I'm about done. Just want to say though that we also get messages from things like flags, caps, card wraps, T-shirts, slogans, on and on.
Anybody say I do?
Okay.
I burned every day with the snap. That's why they're not on me.
Okay. I have managed to keep mine, which has surprised a lot of people, I will tell you.
Good afternoon. Happy to be here. Happy that you're here. Hope to meet a number of you after this. And I hope that you'll take away some of what you hear and do something with it. Do something with it. Because if you come and listen, whether you're required to be here, extra credit, want to be here, and you don't do anything with it, then I think you will have failed the purpose of having this program today. Too many of us get into media and say we're going to change the world, and then we change nothing. Too many of us get into it, and we don't know why we're there, and then others question, well, what are you doing? Too many of us get into this business, and we're kind of just moving along, but not really making any difference. And believe me, all the differences are not seen on the air or on the pages or on digital. You can make a difference with a conversation. You can make a difference with passing by, hearing a conversation, and diplomatically inserting yourself, well, have you thought about this? And just the fact that you were there and had something to say, you can make a difference. I've been a part of the National Association of Black Journalists since a long, long time. I'll give you the year, 1977. So I've gotten a lot from the organization, but I also have given a lot to the organization. One of the things that you do in life generally, but particularly in media, is if you're going to get in it, then you need to help somebody else come along and help somebody else with their growth and continue to grow in your own ways. I've been at this a long time. I still have things to learn. There's always something new coming along. So matter of fact, right now, go ahead and pull out your phone. I'm a boomer, but I'm on Twitter, at Will Sutton, find me. I'm on Facebook, Will Sutton Nola. I'm on Instagram, find me, hit me up, and use the hashtag NAPJ and hashtag Sutton Class, all right? And tag NOLA News, and they'll know that you exist. Because I don't know who at my organization knows that you exist, but social media you should think about for professional purposes and not really communicating with your friends, family, and people who you want to show what you had for breakfast. All right? You can make a difference through social media, because that's one of the main things that has changed since we've gotten into this. We didn't have social media. So it's all a matter of the tools that you use and how you choose to use them. I don't know if any of you have ever typed on a typewriter. We have. I don't know if you ever scanned a piece of paper, but we have. But that's okay. That was then, this is now. So you can use your brain for the same types of things with a typewriter as you can with Twitter or Instagram. What are you going to do with the resource, with the time, with the space, with the opportunity that you have? So I want you to think about what it is that you can contribute. And I want to make sure that you know, for my background, most of my career, I've been an editor. I've been an assigning editor, a supervising editor, supervising staffs of 2 to 4 and 80 to 100. All right? I've been a writer, I've been a reporter, I'm doing a version of that again. But one of the things that you can do is have influence on other people regardless of what your title is. Regardless of what your title is. So you can have that influence on other people, and I want you to do that. It's a big change from the 50s, 60s, 70s, and even the 80s and the 90s in media. We need more of us. And I understand who I'm talking to, and I need you to hear me. We need more of us in these news organizations. But frankly, I don't care if you're there, if you're not going to make any difference. It doesn't matter if you are black, white, Asian, Native American, Latino. If you're going to bring another perspective, then we need you in that place. But if all you're bringing is your talent and your skill, the others will hire you and they'll welcome you and they'll put you to work. I could care less. I could care less. As a supervising editor, as a hiring editor, I hired a lot of people. And in Raleigh in particular, I did this in Gary, but also in Raleigh, I would ask every candidate, not the black candidates, every candidate, what are you going to bring to help the diversity in this newsroom? And usually they were stunned. Because they're like, well, what do you mean? What am I supposed to bring? Well, if you don't have a good answer, maybe you don't need to be in my newsroom. Because I need you to think about what it is that you can bring that nobody else can bring, or is most unlike what others can bring. I need diversity of thought. I need diversity of experiences. I'm from New Orleans. Born uptown, raised in the Lower Ninth Ward, raised in Gentilly. But I don't need all people who have those experiences to make the diverse and effective quality news organization that I'd like to be a part of. Because if everybody's like me, then that's not going to benefit the readers and the viewers. So I want you to think about who you are as an individual and what difference you can make by going into any news organization or any media outlet. So let me expand it beyond journalism into other media outlets. Marketing, communications, public relations. If you're not going to bring something different, then I think you're failing at what you intend to do.
Thank you, Dr. Sutton. So going into the questions for our panel, the first one is, when it comes to diversity in media employment, can you describe the dynamics of the newsroom from when you first began working in journalism compared to today's newsroom? Anybody want to take that?
Guess I'll start with me. Obviously, I've been professional for at least 15 years now, and you may think that's old, you may think that passed fast, but I like it. I'm not that old. But when I first started, obviously I was still into the time where print journalism was pretty big. And what I mean by pretty big was, I can talk about my local experience here. The Courier and the Daily Comet were two separate newsrooms. And we had at least 15 in Houma Courier, at least 8 in Thibodeau as far as the newsroom goes. But it went beyond the newsrooms. It went in the composing staff, it was advertising, there was so many different elements. It started to shorten down, obviously, in you can say there's many reasons why the staffs got smaller, and basically it starts with, it's not just a national thing, it's also locally that, more newspapers are, cutting costs, just to make ends meet. And unfortunately, that also affects, hiring and more people down here, from other areas. When I first started, like I said, we had a vast staff with not only blacks, but we had whites, we had, different minorities on the staff. Today, I can count on my hand how many staffers we have in both newsrooms combined. 5. And that's just from a small local perspective. You can say, the economy's bad. You can say people just aren't hiring. The advertising revenue's not there anymore. More newspapers are shifting from print to digital means. And in some ways that is good, because most of you guys, how many of you guys actually still pick up a daily newspaper today? Anybody?
Right.
Anybody?
Right.
Anybody still buy a paper? Maybe the
old heads, yeah.
Maybe one. So you guys grew up in the digital age where you guys want your news fast, right here on just your iPhones and everything. I don't blame you, man. You can easily pick up your phone. You could pick up scores from sports games. You could pick up political news. But when you think about it, for members in the industry, that's not a good thing. But we still have a very important job to do. Our staff is very small today because of reasons beyond our control, but we still do what we can to make sure we get the news out there to our readers in the local community here in Houma, Thibodeau, Felicia, Terrebonne, we're still going out to the town hall meetings. We're still going out to the school board meetings. We're going to cover high school basketballs. We still need to get that news out to our public. If we're not here to do it, who's going to do it? So we still have a great job to do as far as getting the news out. And there's still hope for you guys. I'm not saying that journalism is dying. It's not. It's just changing. We all have to adapt to the changes. Whether it's print, broadcast, TV station, radio, we still have a job to do. You just have to adapt different ways to make sure we get the news to you guys and to our community, because they're looking up to us. They want us to report on these things. Crime accidents, what happened, who, what, when, where, why. We still have to ask those questions. And the opportunities may not be there, but I still see a reason why we need young minority journalists. Because like you say, when you go out to the community, people, they want to see people who look like them, people who they can trust, people who they can, build sources and build relationships with, so we can report on the topics that are important for our community. When you're a small paper, the way you survive is by being a community paper. You have to get out in the community. You have to interview the gym director. You have to interview the teacher who has a salary cut. You have to put the work in. But our newsroom has changed, and I know and you can share more on with the Advocate and the Picayune. They're a bigger paper, obviously, but I would like to see our paper continue to grow. We have openings at the moment. If any of you guys are interested in a job, see me after. I can give you some details on what you can expect from me. And you guys have a very, like you said, you guys have a very important role to be the future of journalism. You guys are going to be important in shaping what direction your readers or your followers are going to go. So, hopefully we can continue to grow. We don't have the resources, but we make the most we can do. On any given day, I'm a reporter, I'm a photographer, I'm an editor. I lay out pages. I don't know if you guys know what laying out a page is, but you can get with Dr. Stewart, he'll let you know. But we still have an important role to get, even though the industry has changed, we still have an important job to do, and that's, we can't leave our community without news. So you guys can build on that.
One of the things I think about when I watch the news in Baton Rouge in particular is when it comes on at 10 and it signs off at 10:30, and they say, oh, we're following this story, and you can get the details on our website or our stream, or we're going to continue the morning show on this website or our stream. And I wonder how, I know that none of that is foreign to you, but how many people are being left out who don't have access to computers or the internet or aren't savvy enough to go and follow it, And at first, I noticed they were just doing that with stories like the cute puppy who sings or, the kid who dances. But now they're doing it with more serious and more local stories as a means, I think, to drive people to those digital sites, those internet-based sites. But I still think that they are missing out on a lot of the population because maybe it's an age that, but you really have to be proactive to go and look for that. And the other thing I would say is I was a columnist for the Daily Comet here for, I guess, 15 to 18 years of my time in Thibodeau. And when I first started doing the column, I would literally get in my car and drive to the newspaper office and hand them a paper copy. Then we graduated to the little 5.5 disc. Then we graduated to the USB, and then really toward the end, I would sit at my computer at home, finish it off, and email it. I never had to see them, and they didn't have to see me.
So I want to get a sense of who's in the room. Raise your hand if you are curious about or interested in media, any form of media. Okay. How many of you are interested in public relations? Raise your hand higher. Marketing, communications, journalism broadly, digital, whatever that might mean to you. Okay, all right. All right, so one of the things that I want to make sure that you hear is that that's all good, any of those, but you need to write. You need to write. You need to read, because if you read, you'll be a better writer. If you're a better writer, you'll be able to communicate more effectively in all types of ways, not the least of which is verbally. And you need to understand that writing is a process. It does not start and end with your first draft. There's not a single award winner of any prominence, other than breaking news, maybe, where that writer won an award on his or her first draft. It doesn't happen. And you need to get comfortable with the idea that that's the case. Now, I think this is true generally for any of those fields that you responded to, but it's definitely true with journalism. I don't care how old you get or how long you've been at it, the difference with some of the people that I've seen along the way in my career in Gary, Indiana, in New Orleans, in Raleigh, in Philadelphia, in New Jersey, is who walks into the room and knows that it's a gray carpet, 4 mirrors on the wall, chandeliers, 8 rows of fluorescent lights times 4. Who made the count without being asked? Because if you didn't and you don't, you have nothing to write about. Because you wouldn't read a story that says there was an event, here's the title of the event, from a piece of paper that I got, there were people in the room, and so said. boring. All right? You need some other detail. And you can't get that by recording an interview on your phone. You're not going to record that
That's why
on
I
your
hated
phone.
telephone.
Okay? You're not going to get it. So I want you to think about the diversity of content as well as the diversity of people and the skills that you're going to bring. Because if you can't bring something different, and if one of those things isn't, I'm bringing more information and ways of looking at things, then a lot of places are going to smile, maybe, look at you and say thank you. And that'll be the last time you see them. I don't think you're going to the game and just recording the score.
There's so much more than the final score.
Right.
And
Right.
nobody cares who sang the national anthem.
And so you need to understand as you go about this business that you need to be better than everybody else in the room. That ain't personal. That's about making the best for you, your career, and your family. But you need to strive every day to be the best that you can be and to be better than the other people. You need to be one of the people in the media outlet that people go to and ask, well, what do you think? Can you look at something? That's not about a title, that's about respect.
Thank you for that. Do we have any comments? We're going to have more time for questions after, but do we have any comments on some of the responses to that first question? Or anything that was shared? As I spoke with a number of our panelists, they said they would like to have more of a dialogue with y'all. So does anybody have any comments? Or even a question right now based on that first question and some of the responses?
I have a question for Chris. You talked about how when you first started, they had about 10, 15 people in each newsroom, and now there's 5 and 2. Being that you cover a lot of high school sports and different teams, and there's a bunch of different high schools in this area, is it harder to find a medium to make sure they're all covered, or do you work in conjunction with somebody, something like that?
Talking about the hiring process? Or?
No, like covering the games for high school sports.
Okay, for sports? Yeah. Well, obviously, there's a lot of different, ways you can look at it. Obviously, when I first started, the more you got out there, obviously, I remember I started, like, are you in sports journalism? Are you interested in sports journalism? I remember I started as a stringer at the Daily Comet. I'm from Morgan City, I had no idea on how any local high schools work. When I looked at it, I just wanted to, this is a good way for me to get some extra money and some experience. But, the way you get your foot out there is by, getting out in the community, and you also going covering games, it depends on, you have to have a wide open mindset, not just on football or basketball, but, going more to the actual game stories and stuff. But there were a lot more opportunities out there, and there's still opportunities for sports journalists right now. You just have to definitely get the experience right now. Are you reporting anywhere right
Yeah, I'm
now?
HTV.
At the KMSU?
HTV, the TV station.
Oh, HTV at home? Oh, yeah. So not just newspapers, it's also televisions and, reaching out for different media outlets has definitely helped me get to where I am today because, I'm more than a high school reporter. I'm actually covering, I'm doing college with Nichols, LSU, States at times too. And I didn't get those opportunities to go cover a Saints game right when I started. I had to work my way up pretty much. I had to show my editors that they can trust me to go out there and interview Drew Brees or interview Sean Payton, or interview even our local high school coach, South Terrebonne, had a good running program back in the day. So you start right now, by getting your feet wet in the program. You like sports, and you know, you can see me right after. I can definitely, you know, give you more advice on what you can do in order with the direction you want to go into. Like I say, it's still vast with print, journalism, and broadcast, so you know, definitely help.
So going on to the next question. Kathleen McElroy, Director of the School of Journalism at the University of Texas at Austin, is quoted in a Poynter Institute article saying, "We must put the responsibility on the cultural institution we call journalism, not just on individuals or organizations." And speaking of diversity in the newsroom. So the question is, in your opinion, whose responsibility is it to ensure that advancements are being made for diversity in the newsroom? And that's an open question to anyone.
I think it's the responsibility of all of us, but we take different roles with how we fulfill those responsibilities. The community plays a role with making sure that there's diversity in the newsroom if they go beyond complaining about why something didn't get covered. If that's the only thing they do, then it's not going to make a difference when the editors are making decisions, producers, news directors are making decisions about who should get a job. So none of us like, I'll call it bad pressure. So there's pressure like in a game, there's pressure like on deadline, there's pressure for getting something done at home. But those are different kinds of things. But when somebody is coming at you and you feel like you're getting on me, you're putting on me, none of us really like that. But sometimes it's necessary. And if there are community members, organizations, businesses even, that feel like their parts of the coverage area are not getting the type of coverage that they deserve, they need to speak up. But understanding that there's a role that journalists play with coverage. That role is not to cover you because you complain, and any time that you complain, we will cover you, so therefore we have improved our coverage. That's not good coverage, all right? The coverage is not going to be not to ask a question about Kobe Bryant. That's not good coverage. That is not good coverage. All right? Because the journalist plays a different role. What you ask, who you ask, how you ask, those are the details that get into the who does what, when, where, why, how. And unless you come to understand that, then you're operating at a deficit. I couldn't go to most manufacturing operations and tell them how to do their business because I didn't grow up with that. I could ask them good questions as a journalist, but not knowledgeable enough to say, you're doing this wrong, you're doing that wrong. Same thing about journalism. So you need to school yourself and continue to grow and learn. And some of us have to get into positions where we're in charge of something. It can be your own copy, all right? It can be your own stories. It can be other people. It can be in charge of the deadlines. You have to get into position, but you have to earn that. Even if you get it, you have to earn the right to keep it. So I'll just give you a little thing that lots of people say, but few people have the opportunity to do. Stop the presses. So everybody knows that term. I actually did it. Okay? I did it. Okay? I was the guy that went in the press room and I said, stop the presses. And they stopped because Will Sutton said, stop the presses. Now, when was that? Long time ago. Y'all wouldn't have any clue. But long time ago, we had an election, the presidential election, and somebody sent the page on and it said, Gore won the presidential election. Oops! Stop the presses.
Okay.
All right? Don't let those get out the door. All right? But it couldn't have been just anybody walking into that room. It had to be the right person at the right place for the right time. And even with all of that, and it'd be like, why are we doing this? Oh, okay, fine. Then I guess we'll stop. So some of us have different roles for making a difference with diversity in the newsroom and being in charge of different things. And we have a responsibility for identifying people with the talent, skill, ability, and potential to bring them in and to help them grow.
It's about building that credibility.
Yeah.
But I want to say that if you're a minority and you're in a newsroom, that doesn't mean that every time there's a minority story, it's yours to cover.
Right.
You know, that you should be talented enough and skilled enough. And also, if you're not a minority, you should be knowledgeable enough and savvy enough to go out and get a good story. You know, you can't just send black folks to cover black stories. You know, and that was my big thing when I was in the newsroom. And the other thing was that I think differently. One of the stories I always wanted to do when I was here and didn't do was the story of the integration of the Terrebonne Parish school system. The other people in the newsroom weren't interested, but there were still people walking around, and probably most still are in Houma, who experienced that, and in Thibodeau, and I thought it was a story that needed to be told, but obviously they didn't agree with me because, well, I could have done it and probably would have done it on my own if I had had time, but didn't. So I think that journalists have to be respected regardless of their cultural or race or ethnic position, you know, as a journalist, not as, oh, he's our black journalist, we're gonna send him out there to cover only the black schools. Well, I guess there is an interest in that.
And that's where it comes from, creating relationships in the community.
Right.
You can't just sit in the newsroom all day.
No.
You know, that's what I always told my coworkers, that you have to get out in the community. You have to meet, people. You have to establish those sources. That's the way that you can ensure that diversity is going to get into our newspaper. Not just going to a Republican rally or not just going to a Democratic rally, but try mixing it up. Right? You got it. The more you get out there and do, the better it helps you, and the better it helps the newsroom. Because you're letting the community know that you're a trusted source. You're letting the community know that when something happens, they can come to you with story ideas. Not just that affect African Americans or Hispanic Americans or Asians, but everybody. And when you get those stories in the paper, that makes the paper better overall.
You have any other questions from our audience? Comments or questions? Before moving on. Okay. So at this time, I'd like to invite the Department of Mass Communication, Department Head of Mass Communication, Dr. James Stewart, who has been a pillar of support for everything we have going on here. RTVNA, the Columnist Media Group, and everyone connected to mass communication. So at this time, Dr. Stewart.
Hi. Hope I'm talking loud enough for you guys in the back can hear me. I want to thank all you guys for showing up today, our panelists and the organizers of this event. One of the things that is sitting in the back of the room, as I was listening to the speakers that came through, when we talk about diversity, we often think about that in terms of ethnicity or cultural background or what have you. But I think you heard from the speakers today that it means a lot more than that. Basically what we're doing, and I forgot which one of the panelists used this term, but stories, finding different stories. We live in a very, very interesting time. You guys, you younger guys in the room, you consume way more media than we did probably when we were younger. Why? Because you have access to it. TV stations at one time would actually go off the air, a certain time at night, come on a certain time in the morning. Newspapers came out once a day. If you lived in a small town like I did, you didn't have access to bookstores all that much. The libraries were pretty small. So our access to media was relatively narrow. You guys, with devices that you carry in your hand that have more computing capacity than the Apollo missions had, literally, Do you have access to information from around the world real time? In other words, if you want to watch a sporting event from the other side of the planet that's being streamed, you can do that. But at the same time, I think in a weird way, there's actually in some ways less diversity of ideas. Because as the panelists said, we tend to get wrapped up in our own little circles, right? Our own circle of friends on Twitter or Facebook or whatever it happens to be. And we hear the same voices over and over again. I spend a lot of my time, I'm not a big Facebook guy, well, you don't use Facebook anymore, Snapchat, whatever, okay? I'm not big, yeah, that's for old people. So I don't do a lot of that anyway. My digital media consumption tends to be a lot more news. But you pick the top story of the day, whether it be news or sports, economics, whatever, and you follow that story around. A lot of times, what you see is one news outlet reporting another news outlet, or quoting another news outlet, right? Right. You don't see enough of journalists going out, finding stories, and then making sure those stories are accurate before they put them out there for media consumption. Okay? I tell some of my students in the room now, and they've heard me say this before, but in a way, it's like we're eating cereal at every meal. We're never hungry, but eventually we'll probably die of malnutrition because you can't live on just cereal. And so I think, now the question was asked earlier about responsibility. Well, we can blame the media. We can blame schools who are teaching people to go out and do journalism. But part of it falls back on us as consumers. When we start demanding more of these platforms and creating opportunities for entrepreneurs who want to go out there and create platforms to provide that content, then we will start to see a change. Now, you've heard some scary things up here about the newsroom, and how it's shrunk. And we were in the newsroom together post-Katrina. So I was there at the time. And it is true. The newsrooms have dramatically shrunken for a lot of platforms. But I'm kind of optimistic because in a way this is not new. If those of you who are journalism majors and you take Dr. Bigham's class on journalism history, they'll talk to you about the turn of the 20th century. Clickbait, talk to Pulitzer and Hearst about clickbait. They were out and out making up stories on the front page of major metropolitan newspapers, just making stuff up because they wanted to sell advertising. And that's what we see a lot now, even on what should be reputable news organizations. They're putting stories out there that they don't vet. But I think the audiences are becoming more sophisticated. We're becoming, as we would call it, more media literate. And they're starting to look for those sites that they can go to. Because think about your daily lives. You're busy, just constantly. The demands for your time are just overwhelming. You only have a certain amount of time to put your attention to a media message. So you're going to learn to put your attention on those messages that have relevance for you. And when it comes to news, eventually you're going to say, no, I'm not going to that site anymore because I can't trust it. I want to start going to a site that I can trust. And so there are opportunities out there for people that can help us as news organizations tell those stories, the stories that we don't hear enough of. For example, in Terrebonne Parish, we have a very vibrant Vietnamese community, very vibrant Native American community. And historically, I don't think local media has given voice to that very much. Okay? When I got started, I was a sports reporter. I got started doing that. And in those days, a big story was there was a woman who was working for one of the networks. Do y'all remember? It was remember the big controversy over the New England Patriots? They were going to let her into the locker room.
Oh, yeah, right.
Yeah. So a female sports reporter covering the NFL. Now we've got more. Not that we have enough, but it's improved, right? So this media world we live in may provide us those opportunities for people of color, people of people of different genders covering stories they may not have been able to cover in the past. So there's a lot of opportunity. There's a lot of sense there for hope for the future. But once again, it is going to fall back to you guys, both as professionals, to walk into that newsroom and say, I want to be part of something where I can help the public, and as consumers of media, right? Because our political systems, our economic systems, our social systems, our religion, you name it, right? It's all impacted by these opinions that we form based largely on the media. And that's a tremendous responsibility for the media, and it's a tremendous responsibility for the consumers of media. So, once again, thank you for your time. I think we have some time after if you want to come up and visit individually with the speakers. But thank you. Oh, and there's some refreshments in the back. If Andy didn't eat all the. Yeah, save some.